good evening, friends, colleagues, and students. But maybe for Csaba, it's good afternoon. I don't know what time is 1 p.m. there.
It is 12 p.m.
12 p.m. Okay, 7 hours then. Okay. Thank you for joining our session tonight. We know some of you are our regulars, Pak Santo, Pak Ken, Pak Aryo, and maybe some others. And we thank you again for your attendance. As you may be aware, we usually conduct our session on Saturday morning. However, tonight is special. Not only tonight's session commemorates our 1 year existence, but also it hosts an extraordinary individual from UK. He is here live from Brighton for all of us. His name is Csaba Toth, the author of an inspiring book titled Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times, founder of the ICQ Global, and developer of the multi-award-winning Global Disc model. Let's welcome Csaba by giving a round of virtual applause to him. Skip here. What is virtual applause? Oh, here it is. Okay. So please use the chat feature to ask questions. You can ask in Bahasa Indonesia, and we will translate for you. Okay, Roy, please get started.
Okay, good afternoon, friends. My name is Roy, and Csaba, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Csaba. Could you please, Csaba, briefly explain the key takes from your book? Because your book is very, very interesting. Yeah, Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times. You are now in unusual times.
The real question is, when was it usual? It's easy to get used to things, but when you look back, then you realize that it was changing constantly. So the title of the book is really important because most people recognize common sense, and this is what they expect other people to have. So I want you to come to the same conclusion as me. I want you to see the world like me, and then it makes me feel comfortable. That feeling of familiarity, that illusion of certainty. But that's kind of selfish because we are not the same. We have different values, different beliefs, different experiences. We see the world differently. We have different best practices. So surrounding ourselves with people like us might be comfortable, but also is dangerous. So uncommon sense refers to the fact that personal and cultural differences are just clashes of common senses. And if that's how you look at the topic, you can remove this illusion of superiority that I know the truth, I'm above you, I know everything, you're lucky to talk to me. No, just because we have a disagreement, it doesn't mean that somebody is wrong. If you can ask the right questions, I can ask you, what can you see that I cannot? What do you know that I don't? And you can do the same thing. And we can see the same situation from different perspectives, then we can make better decisions. And that's how we can turn our differences into synergy, which is the title of this session today.
Okay, thank you, Csaba. Wonderful. I read your book, and I got also some questions from the audience. One of them is, we know that when we think, feel, and behave differently, we may never work together and engage into a synergy. How do we turn those differences around into synergy? What do we have to do?
Step one might be a bit unusual, but we have to get to know ourselves. And most people would say, why would I do that? I know myself. Not exactly. 95% of our actions are driven by values and beliefs we are not even aware of, but we think that we are so objective and logical. It's just not true. Imagine that you have a tiny, tiny piece of map of Jakarta, and then you come here to Brighton and you want to find something using it. It's going to be difficult. Even if you have growth mindset, you think positive, you try harder, you just get lost more quickly. It's pretty logical. But what most people fail to realize is that the same process happens when we interact with people. We assume that we know 100% of our mental map. We also assume that other people have the same, and that's exactly why communication breaks down. So step one, get to know yourself. Step two, get to know other people, because life makes sense from their perspective. Let's be honest. They wouldn't do something if it didn't make sense to them. So let's find out why. So once I understand why they do something, it's easier to tolerate it. It's easier to accept it. And maybe we can even learn something new from it. But for that, you have to be confident. Because you have to be really confident to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, I don't know. You know what? Your solution is better than mine. Let's do that. You have to be really confident or terrified to do that. But let's go for confident.
Okay, Csaba, that's what your explain is interesting. That what I want to know is how we know ourselves, Csaba. You said that the first thing is we know ourselves. So how we know ourselves?
Problem is that if you don't know about something, it doesn't matter how much you think about it. You can still think about the symptoms, but not the root cause of the problem. You know, if you don't speak Russian, it doesn't matter how much you reflect on how to say good night in Russian. It doesn't matter because you don't know. So that's why we need assessments to go deeper, to learn about those underlying values and drivers, to learn about those preferences, because they determine what feels right and what feels wrong. Now, the problem is that if you are not aware of these values and something goes against them, it triggers a really intense emotional response. And it is so obviously wrong that you cannot explain why, but it feels wrong. So how can I get to know you if you don't even know why that happened? So that's why that is the most difficult part. And that's why it's so much easier to surround myself with people who agree with me. It's comfortable. It feels good. Our brain was designed to make us hang out with people who are similar to us because we can run on autopilot. The brain is 2% of the body weight, but uses more than 20% of the energy. So it's designed to create mental shortcuts, habits. It's designed to keep us in the comfort zone because it's energy efficient. But is it good for us? Unlikely.
So that means, in other words, we have to find somebody different from us, and that takes courage, right? Because we know that it's challenging to interact with somebody very different from us. So the question is, how could we create a synergy if we are extremely different? Can we still get connected in the long term or in a meaningful manner?
Nothing is guaranteed, but it's much more possible and much more likely if you understand yourself and you understand other people.
Okay.
But that's not guaranteed. So, you know, for example, if you look at the diversity and inclusion field, there's a lot of virtue signaling, a lot of, you know, big words that let's celebrate diversity and everything, which is great. Let's get to that point. But before we can do that, we have to get to the point where you can disagree with someone without feeling that you are more or less than them, without feeling the urge to convince them that you are right and they are wrong, because you know the truth. They don't. Indeed, they are against you. So if you can get to that point, then we can go to the next level. But this is the most difficult part. This is a concept called homophilic diversity. It sounds horrible. It sounds like a disease, but it's not. It just means that we like and trust people who are similar to us. Think about recruitment or students. Why would you employ somebody who annoys you? Somebody who disagrees with you? You don't need that hassle in your life. You have enough stress. Why would you want that? So usually we end up hiring somebody who is much more similar to us because we hit it off immediately. It's comfortable. It feels good. The brain says, yeah, that's great. We like that. But there's a problem. Because when somebody disagrees with you, that's exactly where the potential lies for success or disaster. Just because everybody agrees that the earth is flat, it doesn't make it true. That's the problem with that. So diversity doesn't feel good. It feels good until somebody disagrees with us. But what happens after that? That's the dividing line between simple diversity or inclusion. Success or disaster. That's the difficult part. What happens when somebody disagrees with you?
So essentially, we are afraid to disagree, right? Or we are afraid with someone who disagree with us. So the key is accepting the differences, the disagreement, right?
It can be fear, depending on, for example, the hierarchy, depending on our own level of self-esteem. Yes, it can be fear. Maybe we assume that those people are against us because, you see the world from your perspective. It kept you alive. Why would you doubt it? That's just not normal. This is something that we need to learn. But once we learn that, because there is a blueprint of why people think and behave differently, it's easier because they do it for a reason. The interesting thing is that when you talk to someone, and even if you disagree with them, if you zoom out a little bit, then you realize that probably both of you want exactly the same thing. What you argue about is what is the right way of getting there. So this is where the language is important if you want to turn your differences into synergy. Instead of asking who is right and wrong, ask the right question. Is there an even better way of doing things? Because in that case, nobody can lose. You can only win. If that's your way, fantastic. If it's the other person's, great. If it's a combination, even better. But you cannot lose. So is there an even better way of doing things? Often the problem is that people feel that if they change their mind, they betray their personality. If they change something within the company, then they disrespect their heritage. And that's not true. This is the paradox of change, because sometimes you really try to protect something and you completely ignore the fact that the world is changing. So the gap between you and the world is getting bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to that breaking point where you have to do something. So ultimately, you're endangering the very thing that you try to protect. If you really care about something, you help them level up. You improve them. Life is dynamic, so we have to look after things. That's real love, not pretending that nothing is changing, not pretending that you can turn back time, even though some politicians promise that. It's just not true. But it's human nature. When we feel a lot of uncertainty around us, we need this illusion of certainty. And where do you find that? Around people like you. And within the group, we are going to minimize the differences and we are going to maximize the differences between groups. And we can see the result of that. So uncommon mindset is the solution for getting rid of binary thinking. Life is not black and white. Just because we disagree, it doesn't mean you're against me. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. So let's explore it. Let's be more curious. That's a good start.
Okay. Csaba, do you have any, because I know, we accept the differences is very challenging. Maybe not many people can, like you said, open mind or something like that. But do you have any like skill or system so we can learn and we can apply how we can accept differences?
This is exactly what we do. So when people complete the global disc assessment, then we learn about those underlying ways and drivers. And that's important because then we can actively work on somebody's comfort zone and behavioral flexibility. So the first of all, we need to understand that one profile, one personality is not better than the other one. They are just different. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. They can help you or they can hinder you in your professional or your personal life. If you overdo your strengths, they can become your weaknesses. So instead of teaching everyone how to be normal, mediocre, in a corporate environment, we might call it onboarding, then let's understand them. Let's let them double down on their strengths and let's find complementary partners. And that's how you create synergy. That's how you create high-performing teams. That would be the goal. Teaching everybody how to be normal is not the way forward, unfortunately. So sometimes when people complete these psychometric assessments, the last century ones, then they get really passionate about it, that, oh, I'm this type. I can be rude because I'm a red type. Oh, fantastic. But I mean, if you know about that and you still do nothing about it, it's even worse. Don't use it as an excuse. That's exactly when you have to work on it. And because one profile is not better than the other one, you can work on your flexibility, meaning that if something is rigid, it breaks. So we have to work on how to expand that comfort zone. But how do you do that? By step, because that's not natural. Telling people to get out their comfort zone sounds great, like a motivational speech, but the brain is not designed that way. It's like telling you to go against nature. Why would I do that? You don't do that until you understand what is the benefit of doing that and what is the cost of not doing it. then we do that. People don't do anything until it hurts enough. Not too smart people wait until it hurts enough. Really smart people level up gradually, step by step, incrementally. It makes sense. It makes sense to walk every day a little bit so you don't have to run tomorrow. That would be a smart choice.
Okay. So there's a question from the audience. He's trying to relate the differences with innovative ideas, right? Because when you try to accept the differences, meaning you can be innovative, right? So you have any suggestions to engage in innovative ideas, but with the limited resources?
Innovation happens in a psychologically safe environment, which is really important, because if you have an idea and you have to be scared that somebody would say, oh, that's a really bad idea, or if you fail, then they're going to hold you accountable or they blame you, then you're going to keep it to yourself. So creating a psychologically safe environment is important. Having said that, if everybody thinks the same way in that group, then they have the wrong type of tunnel vision. Yes, they can agree. Just because we look different, it doesn't mean that we think differently. And that can be a problem. So if you focus on innovation, you have to focus on the only layer of diversity that has proven benefit in terms of performance, and that is cognitive diversity. The way people think, the way they process information, that's the difficult part. And I can show you plenty of case studies where we have an international team or really different looking team. So you can take a picture, they look good on a website because they look really diverse. But when you look at the global DISC reports, it turns out that the cognitive diversity index is very low. So they managed to recruit people from all over the world who think the same way. That's not good for innovation, definitely. If you want to innovate, then you need people who have random ideas, maybe from a different industry. People need to interact. It's all about the quality of interaction between people. A lot of companies employ the best of the best from all over the world, hoping to create synergy by combining their skills. But in reality, this is not what happens. You put smart people in a team, they can be individually really intelligent, but collectively blind. On top of that, if they cannot interact, because 90% of business is interaction between people who think and behave differently, the performance is going to drop. And there was a company in the US called the Three Circle Partners. They wanted to understand how much potential is lost in a team, not an international team, in a team. And the average was 79%. That's how much potential is lost in a team. So the question is, in your team, is it 90%? Is it 50%? But what we can guarantee is that there's a lot of money and potential left on the table. And this is also a positive approach. You're not criticizing anyone that, guys, you're not good enough. You're telling them the exact opposite, that you're awesome and you're capable of even more. And we can help you unlock that potential by giving you the blueprint of why people think and behave differently.
Okay.
Okay, Csaba, because our audience is here, not only the maybe the what we call the professionals, but also many students here. And can we apply this, what you said, we know of ourselves, and also in the student environment, something like that?
I can tell you a personal example. So when I did my second master's here in the UK, I went to Sussex, which is officially #1 in its category in the world in developmental studies. So officially, there are really smart people there, officially. So when we had our first project, first assignment as a team, then it was almost like a bloodbath. We clashed so badly that we thought that we would fail. Lots of good ideas, and then power trips that, no, I'm right, and then you are too scared to admit that you're wrong. And it was horrible because we knew nothing about this topic. I used to believe that being smart, having a lot of certifications would be enough to become successful. It's just not true. It's not true at all. If you look at, for example, Dale Carnegie's research, he revealed that 85% of success is down to people skills. That's the most important part. Being good at your job, that's one thing, that's the basic. But the people skills, that's the interesting part. Can you make people feel valued and understood? then they stay with you. If you cannot, they have plenty of options. They go somewhere else. And the same principles apply at universities, in your own family, or in companies. It's all about people. If they don't get along, that's not good for anyone.
Do you suggest that, especially students, to go against the common sense?
It depends on the environment. So I tell you
Okay.
why. So
Okay.
I went to 3 universities.
Okay.
My first master is from Hungary, and I've got a master's in Italian linguistics.
Oh.
And it took 5 years to get it, a lot of exams. And even at the end, there's a panel of professors who want to prove that it wasn't you. You can still fail.
Okay.
They can
But
disprove your
they
research.
try to fail you. They try to fail you?
Yeah, it's really friendly. So you can
Oh.
still fail after 5 years.
Yeah,
And
wow.
there the approach is that if they give you a book, then
Uh-huh.
you have to give back 80%, then you are a smart person. Don't question anyone, just give it back, 80%. It's about lexical knowledge, or at least it used to be like that. Here in the UK, I was really surprised, because first I thought it was a joke. I said, what do you mean, really? No exam, nothing? We had assignments and dissertation, but I said, this is ridiculous. It's so easy. But I had to realize that it's a very different approach, because here they make you think, because they know exactly that whatever you learn about, it's going to be outdated very quickly. So your job is to know where you can find the latest information and how you connect the dots, how you can innovate, how you can work with people. And I thought, okay, now it makes sense. And last year, I went to the US as well. So I got an executive MBA. And to be honest, that was the easiest one. I knew that I wouldn't use 95% of the knowledge there, but it was just a challenge. And I met really smart people, and that was a really humbling experience. But I could see the different approaches. So instead of choosing which one is the best one, I just want to take the best of everything and create my own version. Instead of fighting, is it the best one? That is the best one. There are pros and cons everywhere, but you see what you expect to see. That is up to us. And I just want to learn. I want to take the best and make it my own.
Csaba, in your opinion, is how many people profile are there? In your opinion, how many people profile in people? How many?
How many
I mean,
types?
how many different profiles exist?
Yeah,
different profile. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at diversity, then especially the visible layer, it's complicated. But if you look at the range of diversity on the cognitive level, it's almost unlimited. But at the same time, there are different archetypes. So, for example, it started with Hippocrates more than 2,500 years ago, who came up with the idea of the 4 temperaments, that we all have them, and we are all a combination of those. And in 1928, William Marston published his book, The Emotions of Normal People. He was the one who created the DISC model. And because it was an open domain, a lot of companies created their own versions. They all say there's the best one. We don't really care about that, because all of them are missing the cultural intelligence part, which is ours. And it's really important. They explain how the different personality types tend to behave if they are not influenced by anything or anyone around them, which is impossible. It never happens. Your personality determines how you want to behave, and your environment determines how you have to behave. So, for example, you and me can have an almost identical report, but our experience, our background are different. So, we are all a combination of the 4 personality types, but we were conditioned differently by our environment, and that makes it, infinite. So we are all unique, but predictably different. And this is our approach. Instead of pointing out differences, especially national differences that don't even apply on individual level, we want to build a common ground where you can learn how to turn your differences into synergy instead of turning it into painful liability.
Csaba, do you think it is helpful if, for example, since we are kids, so we experience differences, so we experience all kind of things, so when we grow up, we are not framed, or our frame is not narrow, we can have wider frame, because growing up we experience many things, we go to A to B to C to D, instead of we go on only A, B, something like that. which is framed, because we are part of the history, right? The history of our life. Do you think is it beneficial if we, let's say, have experience, variety of experience, diverse experience since we are kids growing up? So when we are like this old, for example, so we have all kind of experience, so we don't see differences as different, because we know all of them. Although we don't agree,
Yeah, differences are not necessarily bad, not at all. It depends if we can make the most of it. So answering your question, if you think about a baby, they are really egocentric. They do whatever they want to do. They cry, but they eat. But at the same time, their survival depends on the approval of the adults around them, usually the parents. And the conditioning starts. So the babies are born with two fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Everything else is learned. Everything else. And they are born with two qualities: that they are capable of anything, and they don't have to do anything they don't want to. Great ideas, but quickly they have to learn it's not true, because they realize that they do have to do things they don't want to, and they cannot do everything because they are not good at everything. So according to research, a typical 1-year-old baby hears the word no 400 times a day. Imagine that. You are 1 year old and your parents are telling you, no, don't do that. No. And quickly you learn, okay, I don't do that. Otherwise, I don't get food. Otherwise, I don't get love. So quickly you learn how to conform to the norms. And you quickly dismiss everything that is not normal. But when you go to school and you are exposed to different norms, that's when the teenagers get confused, because, I don't know what is right, what is wrong. This feels right, but at home they told me something else. Because as kids, we accept the adult's subjective opinion as universal truth. As we grow up, we have to realize that might not be true. And it's very confusing. And sometimes that's why the teenagers are so confused, because they don't know who they are. And that's the difficult part. So that's why what we are hoping to do is to roll this out at universities. So now we work with 16 universities.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had that start when I started. The life would be so different now.
So we have one audience raise her hand, Bu Tita. Go ahead, Roy.
Ya,
Silakan Bu Tita.
mungkin di unmute dulu Bu Tita.
Nggak bisa ya?
Kedengaran. Boleh di ini.
Tolong panitia, please help to unmute Bu Tita.
Sudah, Pak.
Udah, oke. Silakan. Oh, I see,
Sudah.
oke.
Sudah.
Oke,
Oke.
go ahead.
Sudah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Pak Roy and Pak Budi. Hello, Sabah. My name is Tita Jumario. I have been working with a lot of young college students in regarding of training them how to have a more critical thinking and social inclusion application in their lives in regards to the difference of religions here in Indonesia. We've been working with art activities in terms of expanding their knowledge, and I would like to ask something. I've read about this quite a long time ago, but it stuck to my mind. How do you see the difference between nurture and nature in terms of how human how the human social skills can be harvested into if you want to create a better society where everyone can work together? Is it possible to change even though they have been practically nurtured that way, in terms of they cannot see differences as something that they can accept? Is it can it be changed along the way? Because I've seen a lot of people who are actually quite young but already like set in their ways, and I think it's nurturing, right? It's part of the nurturing process of their families and everyone around them. But is it possible that maybe it's in their nature to not believe in changes? Do you have any opinions on that? Because I think it would help a lot of people to know how to accept differences in a way that is less threatening for them. This is in regards to specifically the differences of culture and religious here in Indonesia. Thank you, Csaba.
Thank you. I think
I
it's a
hope
really
that was
good
clear.
question.
Oh, sorry.
It was great.
Okay.
Because it's a really important question, and I think a lot of researchers try to find the answer. Which one is more important, nature or nurture? And I don't think that anybody knows exactly the percentage. Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? We don't know. But what we definitely know is that your personality is usually inherited. You have some certain traits that, for example, if you look at the 6 human needs, some people need much more certainty in their life. Other people need much more variety. Some people need to feel belonging. Some people need to stand out. So depending on these underlying values, your behavior reflects that. So for example, if you were born with a lot of need for significance and also belonging, and you just want to interact with people, you are active, you need to be loud, you need to be heard, you need to be popular because that is what feels right, then that's how you behave. Unless you are in an environment where your parents or your teachers or your boss says, calm down, quiet, that's rude, how dare you, that's disrespectful, and they push you back. And then you quickly learn that, oh, I cannot be myself. I have to look normal, otherwise I don't get the results. So quickly you learn, don't do that. But for how long can you suppress those needs? Other people were born differently. They need much more certainty. They feel the belonging, and that's the right environment for them. So that's exactly what we can measure, the mindset gap between what is natural to you and what is normal and expected around you. So it depends. So if I look at the research, then around 20 or 25% of the people in a country are statistically average. They are like fish in the water. For them, that's the right environment. And I don't think that those people would necessarily have a big comfort zone. Because why would you do something if you don't have to? But if you look at the previous example, that you are a loud person and then you just want to enjoy life, but your environment doesn't let you do that, then it is going to create serious friction inside of you. If you behave the way you want to, then you have the same amount of friction between you and your environment. And probably they are going to reject you. So we learn to pretend. And that's a question. How much do you have to pretend in order to be accepted? There is a normal behavior style everywhere, in your own family, in your company, in your country. And most people conform to that. It's a really primal need that we want to conform to them. We want to belong because life used to be very dangerous when we used to be cave people. If they kick you out of the tribe, then that's it, done. So we learned how to assimilate. But for how long can you suppress yourself? And at the same time, if you never leave your environment, you never watch TV, you never travel, then maybe you never realize that not all the environments are like that. Maybe you go to a different country or a different company and you think, wow, this feels right. That's so much more comfortable. Even if you were not born there, it doesn't matter. That's the right environment for you because your personal preferences match what is normal around you. And you just find it. But if you never leave your environment, you never exposed to it, you don't know. How do you know that you are good at swimming if you've never been to water? You don't know that until you try it.
Okay. Thank you, Csaba. Thank you, Pak Roy. Thank you, Pak Budi.
Thank you, Budita. Great question. Thank you very much. So I have a quick question about chemistry, Csaba. How do you say about chemistry? Some people say if we can get acquainted with somebody else and we don't know the reason, then we can easily say it's a chemistry. What is your opinion about chemistry?
I mean, it's not very romantic to say that even love is just the right amount of chemicals. So, but in a way, it's true. Because when we interact with people, then we assign certain meaning to certain events and actions, and that creates an emotion. So it's really popular to talk about emotional intelligence, for example. And then we learn how to breathe, how to recognize emotions. But my question is, what happens before that? Because before every single emotion, there is a thought, there is a narrative. You assign a meaning to something. So for example, if you ask me a question, I can think that, oh yeah, questioning me because you don't like me. Then I get angry. Or I can assume that you're asking questions because you're interested and I'm happy. So the different narratives, the different thoughts create different emotions and also chemicals, because the emotions are pretty much chemicals. They're correlated. So it is possible. But also we can control it. So there was a really interesting research where it's kind of a bit morbid, but still interesting, that they allowed people to watch a movie scene. And the point was that there was a person on the TV and they pierced the cheek. So they pushed something through. And then they asked the people, have you felt empathy? Did you feel sorry for those people? And of course, everybody said, yes, of course I did. But in the meantime, they were scanning the brain as well. And it turned out when the people looked similar, they felt much more empathy. But when they looked different, they were from a different race. They said they felt empathy, but they didn't. So this is the interesting part. That's the difference between diversity and inclusion as well. The more you know yourself, the more you know other people, the more inclusion you can create, the more synergy, because the more familiar they feel. So, when people say that I love diversity, yes, you do, but not 24/7, because diversity means unpredictability. The brain is not designed that way. So what can we do about that? Get to know people so they become more familiar and we can just close this gap. So yeah, emotions definitely are based on chemicals and also, most importantly, the narrative.
So Csaba, if you said that we should to get to know people, so that's the first, we should get to know ourselves, and then we should get to know people. This mean we get to know the profile or what?
I mean, it's difficult to ask people to complete an assessment so you can read the report before you talk to them. It's not necessarily the most practical option, but in a company, sometimes you have to do that because fast taming is evolving really hard. Sometimes you need the experts, they have to perform, and maybe they never meet again. So we can speed up that process a lot. But in a personal life, you don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But this is where, for example, the DISC model is important, because you can read other people's behavior. And then based on that, you will know what they need, what they want, at least a basic profile. So I call it a blueprint, because if you look at the blueprint of a house, you don't see the color of the wall, you don't see the furniture, you see the structure. So you don't take away the uniqueness, but they are predictably different. Having said that, first, when you meet someone, you don't know if they behave like that because of who they are, the personality type, or because of the environment they conform to. We don't know that. You see the real personality when you interact with people more, when you catch them off guard, when you surprise them, when they are stressed, when they're angry. That's when you can see behind the mask and you see the real personality. I'm not telling you to provoke other people. I'm just saying that people can pretend for long. And this is why culture is important, because you learn what is normal. So most people conform to it, but it doesn't mean that they are like that inside. That takes time to explore.
Yeah. This is we have a opinion from the audience. Ibu Yvonne Chandra. Ibu Yvonne said that seek first to understand and to be understood. Perhaps is the first step. What do you think about that?
Exactly. That's our topic. We help clients bridge the gap between intention and impact. So the problem is that when you ask people about the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated, and most people agree with it. It's fantastic. Well, not really, because statistically, 3 out of 4 people are significantly different from us in terms of what they need, what they want, what they are scared of. So if you try to manage or serve people relying on the golden rule, relying on common sense, it's going to backfire really badly. So we have to understand the other person as well. And we have to be able to connect our message to their highest values. Otherwise, the message is going to get lost. In marketing, it's typical. What's in it for me? That's exactly how you talk to people. Because if they don't understand how connecting with you and doing what you're suggesting is helping them, why would they do that? They don't need that. And at the same time, they can see only your behavior and not your intention. So for example, when I think, or at least when I used to think hard, then I used to look really angry. And then unfortunately, the intention was that people thought I was aggressive, or maybe I was angry. And because I got this feedback, then I had to change it, because no, I wasn't angry. My intention was good. I was thinking about the question, but the impact was bad. So at the end of the day, I have to do something about it, and I have to avoid it, because now I know that it happens. So I need to be able to bridge this gap. It's like speaking different languages, and you choose the one the other person understands the best. Otherwise, the message gets lost.
Yeah. Very good. We have some students attending this session. Anybody, any students would like to ask questions? You can ask in Bahasa Indonesia. We can translate it into English. Anybody? Please. I know some of them are here.
Maybe Pak Husni can share his opinion or his experience using the method for the students for
Okay.
class project. Is
Go ahead,
Pak Husni here?
Yeah.
Hi, Csaba. Good morning. So, yeah, thank you, Wika. Sorry for my bad hair.
Salon.
So we got the privilege of implementing Global Disc to one of our classes. I think it was like a year ago, Buika.
Yes.
It was a year ago, and we basically did an assessment, a Global Disc assessment to 65 students and 13 lecturers. So we basically have the profile, Roy and other participants. We basically have the profile, the Global Disc profile for 65 students and 13 lecturers. And throughout the lecture, throughout the class, we did some interview with every single student in every group. And we also conduct a test to see in what category. We did a team performance test with team performance analysis to see whether they fall into the apathy group or performance group and so on. And the conclusion is we saw that the team who has a very similar characteristic communication style, behavior with their project advisor tends to perform better. So this is what we found. So the group that has some similar communication style, similar behavior with their project advisor, with their lecturer, they tend to perform well in class. Some of them even publish a paper from that class. So they really fall into the performance category. But we are conducting this class again this semester, and students are complaining because they have problem working together with their classmates, especially working online. So they couldn't work together. They complained to us that we cannot work together with our classmates from different major, because and this condition even worse. The pandemics, the students have to use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and those kind of things. It makes things worse. They cannot communicate to each other, and their presentations is going, their project is going bad. But we are currently working on a module on how to implement, based on what we found from our study last year. We are currently working on a module on how to implement the psychological safety, cognitive diversity in class, so that student can collaborate better, especially in this time of pandemic, where people needs to use the online means to collaborate to each other. So that's what we use, Pak Roy and Pak Budi, based on the study that we had from Global DISC assessment last year. Hopefully we can complete the module soon and implement it in the class.
Maybe you have comments, Csaba, on the results?
It was really interesting to see the case study because they shared it with me, and it was really eye-opening that the bigger the mindset gap is between two people, the more difficult it is to work together. But if they can turn their differences into synergy, they can outperform everyone. But for that, you need psychological safety. The problem is that the biggest distance between two people is misunderstanding. So, for example, if you have to work with someone who has a lot of questions and they are quite slow, and then you are really driven, and then you just want to get things done now, hurry up, why would you want to work together? The other one is slowing you down, and the other person would see you as somebody who is reckless and somebody who's endangering the project, somebody who doesn't think. That's not true at all. If you zoom out, you want exactly the same thing. You want a successful project, and both of you need each other because they need your energy, your drive, that you are willing to take risks. But also you need their perspective because they think long term. They focus on the details, so they can spot something that you would never notice, but later on it will come back. So if you can combine those different perspectives and you can see the same situation from different perspectives, that's when you have uncommon mindset. That's when you can make better decisions. But that is difficult because if your first impression is that, oh, you're slowing me down, stop asking questions, it's so annoying, then why would you want to make it work? Unless you know how they can complement you, unless you realize that they love doing what you cannot stand. So if you can work together, that's a pretty good deal because you can achieve more with less energy. But that's something we need to learn. It's not natural.
Csaba, can I conclude this? I know myself, I know the other person, and I adjust with the other person. That's what you want to say about the collaborative or about something like that?
Ideally, it's a two-way street. So it's never just one person. But for example, when we train clients, then usually this is the question: why would I do it? I want them to do it. Well, but in the beginning, do it because you want better results. Do it because you want less hassle. First, you do it for yourself. But ideally, they should do it as well. So it's not about pretending to be someone else. That's not what we want. It's about being you, but an upgraded version. It's about leveling up. It's about speaking different languages. And sometimes people feel that, but then I'm not authentic. I'm betraying myself. I said, okay, then let's look at this now. Are we speaking our mother tongue? No. English is not your mother tongue. It's not mine. But we use this language so we can connect. We understand each other. Does it mean that we pretend? Does it mean that we are not authentic? Does it mean that we betray our personality? No. It's a skill. It's a mindset that makes you more efficient, and it makes the world a better place. It's not about pretending to be someone else. It's about being you, but an upgraded version. That's a good deal.
Can it be trained? Something like that? Okay. How do you, practically, how do you train yourself to at least accept the differences without being annoyed, without being insulted, or without being
pretending?
Without being pretending, right?
Sometimes it's difficult. So it's never 100% because there are things that you're not going to accept because they are just wrong.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to promise something that I cannot deliver. But the more we understand other people, the easier it is to accept them and tolerate them. So step one is get to know yourself. And usually you need this kind of assessment so you can go deeper. And then intentionally get out of the comfort zone. Start hanging out with people who think differently. And instead of feeling the urge that I have to convince them, try to find out why they think they are right. Find out if there's a better way of doing things. If you can do that, then gradually you can expand your comfort zone and gradually you can enhance your behavior flexibility. But naturally, we don't do that. A beautiful example, for example, there was a reporter in the US who asked one of the supporters if they are part of a lot of Facebook groups. And the guy said, yeah, I belong to 28 different groups. Oh, that's fantastic. But do you also join the groups where they disagree with you? And the guy said immediately, no, because they call me stupid there. So this is a typical definition of homophilic diversity. We surround ourselves with people like us because it's comfortable. And most people don't want their beliefs to evolve. They want their beliefs to be confirmed because that gives them the feeling of certainty. But that is dangerous. Just because everybody agrees around you doesn't mean it's true. If you want real safety, if you want real certainty, then you have to expand your horizon. You can do it on your own, or you can hang out with people who are different. We don't have to agree on everything, but if you can at least respect it, that's a good sign.
Okay. Thank you, Csaba. I think we are almost 8 o'clock, right? It's very short actually, but we hope that this is the beginning for future journey together. And then we hope that you can be our resource person again in the future. But before we close, I think we have a door prize to be given to Ibu Tita for the excellent question
Thank you.
and comment
Thank you.
for in this session. I think the committee will ask you the contact number or something like that. Please inform the admin directly, not in public. So I know that
Okay.
maybe you can inform the phone number or something like that
Of
to
course.
them, to the
Thank
admin.
you.
Thank you very much, Budita, for very inspiring question. So I personally learned, from your question and comment. That's very, very, very interesting.
Thank you.
And then secondly, I think we have a photo session. Is it, Nani? Or
True.
okay.
Yes, this
So
is
maybe if we could turn on the camera for maybe 5 minutes, before we end the session, so that we can have picture together tonight.
ladies and gentlemen, I will take a documentation by screenshotting Zoom. Please turn on your camera moment. I will spell until there and please get ready. Maybe for the first page to be captured. Just wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the second page. Wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I will get back to the moderators. Thank you for
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for a very interesting discussion tonight. I know this is not a perfect time, Friday night, because usually we have a Saturday night session. But again, because time differences with Sabah, we host the the session on Friday night. We will have, this is our last session in 2021. So we are going to have the next session in next month, January 2022. Of course, with another interesting topic. Before we close the session, we wish you all a happy and healthy Christmas and New Year. Please stay away from COVID-19 by complying to the health protocol and by living a healthy life. Have a good rest tonight and hope to see you all next year. Thank you.